Thank you. I'm unmuted this time, right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So I'll start this. All right. So thanks for the introduction, Amy June. And hi, everyone. I didn't introduce myself as I joined in, but there was discussion going on, so I didn't, jump in. But yeah, it's nice to see all of you. We had a nice conversation before. So today we are going to talk about static analysis for Drupal modules, and I'll talk about this mainly from two perspectives: development and NCI. But a little bit about me before. Uh, I think all of us have switched off video, so this is one of those times this year when my photo slide is actually useful. So I'm an engineering manager at Accelerant. I'm quite active on Twitter. That's one of the best ways to reach me. And I pretty much everywhere online, I go by the name Hussein Web. And that's the same for Drupal.org. Lately, I've been starting, I've taken on recording YouTube videos. So you can find me on YouTube as well. And if you want to reach out for anything, just tweet at Hussein Web. So let's talk about static analysis. And I wonder, typically I would want to have some kind of interaction over here in these first few slides. So I'm wondering if someone can spot a problem with this piece of code. I'm not even sure if somebody's trying to speak, so I wonder if this is going to work or not.
No comments.
I'm sorry, did someone say something? I didn't catch that.
Hello?
I said
Yeah.
no document.
I think it didn't work.
Yeah, you kind of cut out there.
Yeah. It's okay. Maybe like this is not the best format to have this kind of interaction. Can we give it one more try? I mean, if someone wants to say.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay, yeah.
Well, this is not defined currently.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead. Let's look at a few more samples. What about this?
You're looking for something wrong with it?
Yeah, is there something, or can you spot something wrong with it? There may be nothing wrong with it, it's.
I don't see it. I mean, there's an extra comma at the end of the array, but that's not really an error. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Okay.
For the ... but I think that's.
Oh yeah, that's, yeah. What about this?
That one isn't going to, that one's not returning anything, so it's going to not do anything.
Okay.
The array form. Form is defined and you've changed it, but you haven't returned it, so.
All right, okay. That's one, yeah.
Mark says there's no documentation.
The PHP doc comments, okay, yeah. How about this?
Yeah, Y was not defined outside of the if statement.
Yeah, okay. Anything wrong over here?
If you define title twice and you've set it twice with different values.
Right. What do you think about this one? Okay, so let me backtrack and say it if you like look at few things. Now this is very simple one line thing. The problem over here we could argue is that sum is not defined. I think that's what I'm sorry, I didn't see who was speaking, so I'm not really sure who was speaking at that time. But yeah, someone did point out that this sum is not defined, and in PHP this is not a problem, and that's the bigger problem. PHP doesn't report these things as errors. So all of these code samples that we looked at, there were no incidents where PHP would report it as an error, and that's a bigger problem for us. So let's look at all the examples we went through over here. The problem is not really related to PHP. It's more about a Drupal best practice that title is always translated. We didn't catch that. We usually pass this in T function, the title itself, which we do over here. But in this particular example, we are looking at a class, the Drupal 8 style form class. And the convention over there is to not use the global T function, but the T method, which is on that class. And then over here, yeah, again, I think the person, I'm sorry, who, I don't know the name, but yeah, they pointed out that there is a chance, not in this particular example, but if you do change the value of $X to certain values, it's possible that $Y never gets defined. And yeah, this was, I think this was immediately caught. Title is repeated. Again, PHP would not throw errors over here. It would just accept it. And I believe, I don't remember exactly, but I believe it's the last value that you type in wins. But again, this is not going to be reported as an error. If you were expecting that the form's title was element title, you would actually see text label. And over here, again, not an error, but the practice over here is that you would use dependency injection to get the config factory object when you're working in classes such as these in Drupal. And form-based class, for example, does have helper methods. I'm sorry, was someone saying anything? Anyway,
no, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, the point with all of this is that it's tiring, going over the same piece of code again and again, and day in and day out, 8 hours a day, looking at code and trying to identify these problems. Problems which may not be there, and there is a whole class of problems. We just, I think, went through 5 or 6 examples, and doing this daily, it is tiring. Which is why we have code reviews. We have things like, this is a screenshot from some code review where someone says that, okay, did you know you can write this shorter? Now, all of these things, the way I would put it is, this is tiring work, code review, and it's very, very valuable. I'm a big proponent of code review. In where I work, I'm involved in setting best practices for our organization. And code reviews are mandatory before anything gets merged in the main branch. It has to pass through peer review and then subsequent testing and everything. But the fact is that code reviews can be tiring, and for the same reason, I believe in automation. I try to automate as much as possible, which is why the session today, using tools to find as much as possible. There is this thing about code reviews, like comments like these coming from a person are a little difficult to accept. But if it's a bot telling you to do these things, it's it's fine. And then the idea is that you have consistent optimized code across your code base, and automation helps us do that. But anyway, I'm not going to talk more about automation today. Let's talk about static analysis. So if we want to look at different issues that relate to code, we could probably classify them in these 3 things. One of them is code style issues, which don't hamper the execution at all, but they are important for working in a team. It is often said that code is read at least 10 times. Code is written once, but is read lots of times. right? And we have to optimize our code for that, not for machines to read it. I mean, that's a separate topic. Performance is a separate topic altogether, but um, optimized, optimize reading the code. I'm sorry, let me backtrack. We should optimize our code so that it can be read by human beings. And that's where code style issues come in, and the point over here is that, have any code style. It doesn't matter which, in Drupal, when we're working with Drupal code, there is a Drupal coding standard that we follow, a coding style guide. And it's not important what style guide we follow, we just follow one of them. So when we are working with Drupal, we just follow Drupal style guide. We don't think about it further. If it's JavaScript, we pick up one of the style guides, and so on. In fact, it's a trend in newer languages that they are very, very opinionated about formatting. Things like Go, Rust, all of these languages, they come with a built-in formatter, and they don't even let you customize them. It's not like in PHP it is possible that you have PSR 212, and then in Drupal coding standard. Over here, from the day they were designed, they did not give this choice. There is an opinion, and that's what you have to follow. And that's the point, really. It's like, okay, follow anything, but follow it consistently. Anyway, moving on. Then there are logical issues, and they could be related to code. I think one of the issues that we saw today, the first few examples, they were all issues related to code. And sometimes they could be related to domain. It could be that now related to domain issues, like both of these kind of issues, they're difficult to catch by a tool. But we can attempt to catch as much as possible using this static analysis tools, which we are going to see. Related to domain, that's really the purview of peer review, code review, and an educated review that, by somebody who is adept in that domain. And tools won't help you catch those kind of issues. And then there are runtime issues, and these could be, things like, for example, a race condition. We don't normally see that with PHP. I'm just giving an example. If you're not handling certain kind of error properly, then you would see these problems in runtime. So those kind of issues. Now, to deal with all of these kinds of issues, we have two main methods. One, we'll say static analysis, and these are great for things like logical issues related to code, like I said earlier. Style issues, that's not really static analysis. It's close enough, I would say. They are like linting tools, but let's just put that in this bucket for now. And then there is automated testing, and that's where you would actually test for issues related to domain or runtime issues. If there is a chance of race condition, can you write a test that can replicate it? Or if there is a chance that a certain variable may not be set to the expected value, can you write a test for that? So that's automated testing. And now these two methods are not complementary. In fact, there has been this, I think not recently at least, but sometime in the past, there has been, heated discussion around this, that you don't need static analysis, automated testing catches everything. And I think that's missing the point. It's about using the best tool for the job. There is an overlap, certainly. There are kind of issues which can be caught both by static analysis, the kind of checks that is your variable of the correct type, that kind of analysis, which can be caught by automated testing. But I would say that overlap is small, it's quite small. And both of these efforts, they're complementary. You have static analysis that lets you catch a huge class of errors very easily. And there is automated testing, which you should definitely use to catch errors that it is good at catching at, things like we discussed, errors related to domain, things that static analysis is useless at. So some of the tools that we look at in static review, and I do realize that not all of these tools are strictly static analysis. Like I said, I'm just going to put them in the C bucket for now. I think many of us would have heard of PAReview. It's the standard style checker for Drupal. I think few years back, I don't remember exactly when did we stop accepting. We had a process of sandbox projects before on Drupal.org, right? And PAReview was the standard tool that you would check through. And I think it's even used today, but now it's security application. Anyway, so this peer review is a tool, one of the standard tools in Drupal ecosystem. Then we have PHP code sniffer, mess detector, stan, and then these three are more static analysis tools: PHP stand, fan, and SAM. And then there are like, since with Drupal we do work with JavaScript and CSS, so there are other linters specific to CSS and JavaScript as well. So let's look at PHP CS. It's easy to use. We have what are they called? So we have standards, different standards. So we have a coding standard for PSR2, PSR12 for Drupal, and then two more sniffs I think called Drupal practice and Drupal security. I think Drupal security is not, it does not work with the latest version of PHP CS, but Drupal and Drupal practice work well. And yeah, you would just run it, you would say PHP CS, pass it the standard and give it code, and it will give you a summary of problems with your code. And this tool is great at catching things like style errors, coding style violations. So, things like, how many, like the kind of indentation, but also things like, are you missing things like PHP docs? I think someone commented on that earlier. The documentation is missing. So PHP CSS, it will point that out, that documentation is missing, or parameter types are missing, or return types are missing. But it's quite limited in scope. It works with a file at a time. It's not really a static analyzer as such. It's more like a tool that just breaks down a file and looks, just looks at it and sees if it is correct. It does not really execute it. And I have seen PHP CS even, certain kinds of PHP syntax errors, it lets it go. So, I mean, of course, there is a PHP linter for that. And, PHP has a built-in linter. You can just run PHP-L and the file name to check it. But in CI, I typically use PHP lint. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Then we have PAReview, which I already mentioned. And that's a wrapper on PHP CS. It's the same. It uses the same standards that I mentioned earlier, Drupal practice. And then it checks for a few more things like, the README files and things like if license.txt is committed, things like that. So like you can see the screenshot on the right side that it has found some issues. And it was a wrapper on more tools in the past. I'm not sure if they're still there. Things like, it would even check for spelling mistakes in the code and everything. So one of the problems with this tool is that it's not easy to use it in CI pipeline, which is why, I started with writing my own Docker image, which we'll come back to later. But yeah, in CI pipeline, you would want that tool, if it finds errors, it should return an exit code, non-zero exit code. And it does not do that. So it's good for local development, when you want to check that your code is, that your code appears correct. If you want to check that locally, or if you want to use that for, like how we use it for the security applications right now, that's okay. But for CI, it falls short. Then we have mess detector. And this is really, again, this is not a static analysis tool. It's a different thing. It breaks up a file and then it really checks for things like it checks for complexity in the code, to put it short. It checks for a few things like, like you can see in the screenshot that it does check for, like, you can see some errors like the variable format char is not named in camel case. So, it has those rules. It works based on rule sets. And like these rule sets are fine, but then you can see certain errors like, one of these, the method format has a cyclomatic complexity of 22. And we'll not go into these measures in this talk today about cyclomatic complexity and all of that. These are basically measures of code complexity. And PHPMD is useful to catch that. It comes with some defaults. For example, it has a threshold of, for cyclomatic complexity, it has a threshold of 10. And I find that for Drupal code, it is difficult to stay under 10. It is possible, we have done it, but it's a challenge at some time. So of course it is configurable, whatever, like suppose you want to change your threshold for cyclomatic complexity, you can do that. And so on for other measures as well. Nth path complexity and so on, you can certainly change that, configure that. And then we have static analysis tools. I mentioned these three of them. I'm forgetting if there are more, but these three are popular one. I remember checking, I think the first one that I checked was fan. I think that's the correct way to pronounce it. But PHPstand was one of the easiest ones to use at that time, when I started looking. And then it became really popular in Drupal community as well, because you might have heard of Drupal check. This was a tool that was used to check the entire, all the modules on Drupal.org for deprecations. So a PHP, it's Drupal check is a wrapper on top of PHPstand, right? That's one of the things that static analysis is able to do, check for deprecations and everything. And SAM or SAM, I'm again, not really sure how to pronounce this correctly. This is one of the newer ones, or at least I found it recently, and I think feature-wise it has parity with PHPstand. I'm not really used it because I'm not really trying to get it working with Drupal. Personally, I just use PHPstand, and with Drupal check being maintained, as a PHPstand wrapper, it's what's it called? It's a controller, I believe. There is a custom controller in Drupal check which is used with PHPstand. So we have kind of invested our CI infrastructure to continue using PHPstand. But some does appear interesting. There were some really interesting features. I think there was I read about a feature that would check for security issues in code, using static analysis. It was really interesting. It would help you catch things like XSS vulnerabilities, and this is one of the difficult to catch bugs, and it had a really interesting mechanism to catch it, but I've not tried it yet. But one of the things that these do, and like one of the reasons why PHP docs are so important is because PHP traditionally is not a typed language. We do have some level of typing now with PHP 7 and 8, but yeah, traditionally it has not been. So this, the types, all these IDs and static analysis tools, they rely on PHP doc tags to understand what types anything is, right? So the code you see is from Drupal 8. It's one of the plugins, and you can see that things that could be type hinted are type hinted, in the constructor, which it's kind of dark. You can't see that, so you can see that for configuration, array is pointed out that okay, this is an array, but string only recently PHP 7 has I think with PHP 7.1, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe PHP 7.0, that we have got this type ins, and like the entire code base has not moved to adopting that anyway. But these type hints have been so when we say it over here, it's just a hint. PHP is not really checking for the type over here, because this is like for PHP it is just a comment, right? But static analysis can use this information to check. They'll analyze the code flow and they'll check that okay, like, is there a point in time, or is there some code that is constructing this object and not passing in string for the second parameter. And that's basically how static analysis works, except it does that for each and every variable and each and every line of code in your entire code base, right? And as PHP 7's typing system has been catching up, that's great. Like we don't really need, for example, even today, we don't really need to make this PHP docs that descriptive, because like primitives and other objects, we can actually mention them by name in the function signature itself, which is certainly better, because in that case PHP will definitely enforce those type checks. We don't have to make sure that in code, we don't have to make sure that that okay, somebody is passing in string. PHP does that for us, and that's the benefit of typing, but like that's not what we're talking about today. So static analysis will look at the entire piece of code and see if from anywhere, any part of code is constructing this object and not passing in string for a second argument. And there are a lot more features that it has. So for example, like I said, PHP already supports primitives and classes in type hints, and very soon it will support union types. That's where you would say that, okay, that a variable can be either an int or a string. Maybe, you can say that. Right now that's not possible in PHP. PHP 8 you would get that, but it is right now it is possible if you want to specify it in PHP doc, and static analysis can handle that. But these static analysis tools, they can handle a lot more. They can handle generics. There is a specific syntax where you can use something like a template syntax, where you can with I mean, of course, PHP doesn't check for it, but the static analysis tools can understand that, okay, we are using generic. So if you're starting off with any type of variable, it stays that way. Shaped arrays. So now this could be really useful for something like form arrays, for example, which is uh, in right now in Drupal code, we just say array $form. But with static analysis tools, we can really define that the array is supposed to look like this. It is supposed to be an array of arrays, which is string to string. And also very simple things like iterators and collections. Things like this is an array of strings. A very simple example, you can't specify that with PHP natively, but in PHP doc, you can certainly say that, okay, this is an array of ints or integers or array of strings. So static analysis tools support all of that. And again, the benefit is if you're using one of these, that you can catch it in any of your stages. So speaking of stages, where do we use this? So locally, you would just install the relevant tools yourself. There are various options. Some of the tools are installable on a global at a global level using Composer Global, or typically you would install them per project. And then you have IDEs which support tools like this out of the box. There is a whole concept of language servers which make these IDEs really powerful at catching these things. Excuse me. And then, yeah, there are Docker images, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There are two Docker images, PHPQA and DrupalQA, particularly, which I'll talk about. And again, if this is helpful, if you don't want to install these tools globally yourself, you could consider just running it off a Docker image. Then the second option is a pre-commit hooks. And you might have heard of this tool called Drupal Quality Checker by Vijay. And I kind of forked it for building our own quality checker, because of course, we built it with our own opinions. So we forked it, and then we kind of improved it at a different thing, So the way you would use this is you would use it with Composer as a developer dependency. And it uses Grum.php, which sets up a pre-commit hook, So whenever you are trying to commit something, it will run checks. As you can see on the right side, it'll run certain checks and see if your code, the code that you're committing, does that meet all of this, does that pass all of these tools? And so over here, you can see that, okay, it's trying to run PHP lint, that's passing, but YAML lint is failing and PHP CS is failing, Twig CS is failing. So there are a lot of things, it's very, very configurable. I'm not, for example, I'm not running PHPstand in this example, but you can certainly run PHPstand if you want. So every time you commit, even before the commit is done, you know that, okay, if it's breaking something. And yeah, if you have really fast running unit tests, yeah, you would also want to run PHP unit before committing. And then it's the CI, and this is one of the most important things, because even if you miss the other two, this would definitely catch errors. And it happens, right? For example, for some reason, pre-commit hook didn't get installed on a developer, and developer did not really remember to run these tools before committing it, or they just committed it with git commit -n, so that tests don't run. But we don't want to deploy such code, so we run this in continuous integration, and that's that it has to pass. It won't get deployed without a continuous integration server. So we saw all of these different tools, and I think we'll focus mainly on the CI tool. This particular Docker image, which I wanted to talk about. If you remember, I mentioned that you can't use PAReview in CI, and that was my inspiration to get this started. And I found another community image called PHPQA. So I built it on top of that, which means that if you're using Drupal QA, you would get all the tools that's present in PHPQA. And on top of that, it will contain the tools that we use normally in Drupal workflow, things like PAReview, Drupal coder sniffs, and all that, Drupal check tools. And yeah, right now I'm supporting 7.2 onwards. 7.1 image is there, but it's not, I'm not supporting, I'm not updating it. It's it's end of security for 7.1, right? So I'm not really updating that image, but it's there if you want to use it. And 7.2, 3, and 4, I'm supporting it, updating it on a regular basis. And this is how you would use it. I know it's like a wordy syntax. You would probably, like, if you're using this with if you're really using this on a local machine, you would probably want to alias it. And this, like, you don't need to copy it over here. It's there on the GitHub page, this exact command. And most of it is really Docker run syntax. If you're familiar with Docker, most of it is not really scary. It's you're just saying that, okay, run this image and map the current directory into a directory called /project, and one more temporary directory, and change the working directory to /project, and you're specifying the image, and then the command phpstand analyze web /module/custom. If I were to run it, I would typically do it like, I would run shell and then run commands inside it. But yeah, normally I would say that you would alias it. But really, this is useful in CI. So like most of the CI runners today, they work with Docker. So you would, like, for example, the screenshot is from GitLab CI runner, and I'm using my own image over here, PHP 7.4 version. And you can see that later, it does its thing, like GitLab is running, it's using this image and it's setting up its environment, and then finally running the commands I wanted to run, compose or validate, and PHP lint. You can see in the screenshot, like on the down below. So yeah, there is a whole collection of tools over there, and I'll paste the link in chat later. But yeah, it's easy enough to find. If you can just search for Drupal QA, it's on GitHub. So that's really about it, about running these checks in CI. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them and see if I can do a quick demo on one of the code bases I have open right now.
Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute. How about a demo, Hussein? Did you offer a demo?
I was thinking about that. So let me see what I have open, and yeah. Past few days have been quite busy, so I don't really have anything open. So let me see what I can open right now. So I can open this. So yeah, I think this would be an interesting project. By the way, this is an open source project. You can check it out. I can paste the link. It's called Contrib Tracker, and we run it in-house to track contributions from all our team members. So now what it does is, periodically it will scan Drupal.org, and it will basically mirror all the contributions. If they have posted any patches, and recently we have added support for GitHub. So if you're creating issues or creating pull requests, everything gets mirrored in Contrib Tracker. So so with this description, you can imagine that there is a fair bit of custom code involved, which makes it a good candidate for us to run some tests. I'll just make sure that I have Composer dependencies installed. Yeah, it looks like it's installed. So let's see if I can break something. So this is some file, and I'm not really concerned. Okay, so I'm just going to break something over here, and I'm going to add it and try to commit. So let's say break something, and immediately it tells me that no, you cannot. It finds a lot of problems. So there are two checks that have failed: PHP lint and PHP CS. Immediately it tells me that there is a parse error, and it has also found a lot of PHP CS errors, which is kind of like a false positive over here, because it's really the bracket, breaking the bracket that has caused this. So if I were to change the bracket, let's put in some other kind of error. I'm changing the indentation this time, and going to add that again. So let me try so by the way, like because of those checks, it has not been committed. It's still showing that it's broken, and now I'm getting a different error that okay, that line has been indented incorrectly. But now let's look at a little bit more. I think I'm not really sure what I can do to break PHPMD. So let me see if there is something else I can break. PHPMD is really interesting if it's but it's I think there is a lot there before I can start talking about it. So yeah, by the way, I should have said this is Grump PHP, and you would install this by running something like this composer it's in accelerant namespace, but this particular package is quite um, how do I put it? It's quite generic. I think the only thing that's there is the commit branding. That's the only thing. This X over here, but otherwise, yeah, it's open source. It's I think MIT license, so feel free to look at it, fork it, uh, change the logo to suit your needs. And the way you would configure this is with something like it's this file from php.yaml, and all the checks that whatever configuration you have over here. So for example, we even enforce the commit message that it has to begin with the Jira issue number. That's one of the things we do, and we have configured all of the tools. So like we are running PHP lint, YAML lint, Composer. So all of these are um, with default options, but for some of them we can configure that okay, Twix CS, we have configured that okay, it needs to run with this path and exclude certain directories, because Drupal code does not pass Twix CS, so we have to exclude that. And all of these tools that we are running, PHP CS. So for example, if you run this tool, if you install this tool, you also get some presets that you can start with. So a phpcs.xml, this defines. So we're not really following the exact Drupal coding standard, but we have modified it a little bit. That we have changed some of the rules, excluded it. So this file comes entirely. I should just open the GitHub page at this point. If there is, okay, Drupal QA would be. Apologies, it's not open. It's yeah. Yeah, so the installation instructions over here, and it uses Drupal Core Composer scaffold, which lets it install these 3 files, which is a good starting point. PHPMD also, we have modified it so that it works seamlessly with Drupal while catching complex code. And PHPMD is really good at catching problems like very, very complex code, like like very extremely long methods, or methods with a lot of loops, or a lot of if else branches and everything. And yeah, all the instructions are here. Again, I think this is MIT if I remember correctly, so feel free to use it. However, like I said, it has been customized from Vijay's original package, so it's like that's the original source. And Drupal QA, this is the again, I'll paste the link later, but this is the command which I mentioned earlier that you would use to run. And let's okay, I don't think I have this image on. I was trying with PHP stand on this project, so maybe I have it, but I don't. And I'm afraid Docker run will take some time because I don't have this image. let me just let it pull. Yeah, these are the two main tools I would say, Drupal QA and which would let you catch a variety of errors in CI. Drupal QA for CI, I won't really, it's not really that usable for local development, but it is there. There is a way to do it if you want it. And there is, like I said, there is a whole list of tools that this supports. All of that is in this documentation. And PHPQA contains a lot of tools, so you can just use that. So basically, whatever you can do with PHPQA, you'll be able to do it with Drupal QA as well, because it's based on that image. So all of these tools, you can see it, and it's a huge list. You get all of these tools in your CI Docker image. It's quite useful, I would say. So you can see tools like fan and PHPstand and everything. I don't need to add any of that because that's there in the base image. Right. Just check if that's almost done. Yeah, and like I said, Drupal quality checker. So either accelerant/Drupal quality checker, or you can use this Vijay's. I think he also maintains it, so it's not really. Yeah, 8th May. Okay, I think that's it. So either of these tools, and yeah, I think Vijay is branded with the nice Drupalicon logo. So yeah, I would say that, okay, it's still using PHP row/grump PHP. There is a different, one of the reasons people don't install all of these tools is that it messes up your dependencies, which is already like, with something like Drupal, it's already, the dependency tree is already quite complex. And if you install something like grump PHP, it kind of messes up the entire dependency tree. So what I have done in the latest version is use a different package called grump PHP shim, which kind of minimizes, there are almost no dependencies because it runs as a far archive, PHAR, that far archive. So there are no dependencies, it's quite easy to install it. You don't have to worry about your dependency tree. That's one of the standard reasons why people don't install developer tools in Composer. Some people, they avoid doing that because it just messes up the dependency tree. That's why there are things like these Docker images, they are there for that reason. And the Docker images are also useful in CI, of course. So let's see, I think that, let's run this. I just copy this command as it is. Okay, this could be interesting. Oh yeah, this is fish. So one second. The command that I had given was for bash. So for fish, it's slightly different. So it's running, and like Docker, it takes a little while, but yeah. I am expecting errors over here because PHPstand needs an entire, needs the entire code base. So there are certain tools like linter and PHPCS, they don't really need the dependencies. You can just run at, can just give it one PHP file and it can still do its job. Static analysis tools, they're not like that. They need the entire dependencies because they actually analyze the whole code base. They need an autoloader and everything. So for example, all the errors that we are seeing over here is because it cannot find these classes. There's no autoloader configured. So these tools like PHPstand, you have to configure it a little bit to give, for it to get this, for it to be able to find an autoloader. And you might know Drupal's autoloader is tricky. There is no autoloader for modules, for example, right? You need a custom autoloader. Composer autoloader is not enough because Drupal doesn't load modules unless they are enabled, right? So there is a custom autoloader. So we need to write a custom autoloader for PHPstand. I'm forgetting which project I actually have that on, so I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Oh wait, it must be this. Okay. Yeah, I think it's over here. Yeah, it's using this configuration file. So it should at least give meaningful errors, not those class not found errors. And PHPstand operates at levels, starting from level 0, where it catches really critical things, and upwards to level 8. So you can see like these kind of errors over here, like invalid type hints and all of that. I think all of these are invalid types, and that's really because uh, like like I said, it uses Drupal's documentation as well, right? And it's not that great, which means that all of these errors, we can't work at the maximum level when working with Drupal code with something like PHPstand, because all of these these are not false positive, these are valid errors, but these are those kind of errors where you really can't do anything. Okay, I see invalid classes also, which means that probably it's not configured. I am sorry about this, and I don't think I have. It's been a while that I configured PHPstand. It's level 1. Yeah. So you would configure PHPstand using this configuration file called neon file format, which is very, very similar to YAML. It like you can see it's almost like YAML. Yeah, I think that's it for the demos. I'm sorry, PHPstand. I wish I could have prepared a better demo, but yeah, there it is. These two tools. I'll paste the link in chat. Again, any questions? I'm happy to answer.
And did you have a question? Anne asked in chat if there were tools for checking Twig best practices.
Yes. So like I showed over here, Twig CS, and it's configured along with this Drupal quality checker. So you can run Twig CS by itself. I'm afraid the default style sheet, the default rules that come along with Twig CS, they are too strict for Drupal course Twig, the Twig templates, which is why, why you saw that, had excluded Drupal core from the checks. But yeah, Twig CS is one of the things you could use. It's very, very similar to PHP CS. It checks for things like, code style consistency, which includes indentation and things like that. I believe there is a Twig lint also, but I think that was not as much maintained. When deciding to use between these two, I think I settled on Twig CS for, I think because mainly I could get it working.
So again, hi, this is Mark. I got a question. What do you think of like you have the Grunt PHP which checks commits and style and everything? What do you think of that as compared to like VS Code has linters and does automatic PHP CS and things like that? What do you think of the comparison between the two? Would you say that this is just like a catch-all just in case things are forgotten, or?
Yeah, I would say that, because this is really valid when we're working across teams, and at times, as human beings, we make mistake, right? We might not have seen something slip by in VS Code. So there is a hope that we catch it at commit time, that we don't let that thing get committed. That's really what it is, and that's the reason we have CI. It could be there could be a situation where somebody forgot and ran git commit -n, to skip all of these checks. You can do that, right? It's not really rocket science. You can just say that git commit -n, it will not do any of these checks. It will skip all the pre-commit hooks, or for some reason, for whatever reason, pre-commit hook didn't get installed on someone's system, and that's why we have it in CI. So it's really, like you said, catch all. I would use, in fact, I do use, in VS Code, I do use those linting tools over there. And uh, at times I use PHP Storm, and that also has a pretty good, this error catching system. So I use that. And then in case I've forgotten something, commit tells me.
Perfect, thank you.
what I find is, like, okay, so I use PHP Storm for like a little bit on a, a bigger project, but if it's like a very small Drupal site or, just like a PHP package, I don't bother with PHP Storm for that. You know, I think, like my benchmark is if it has a dependency injection component, then I'll open PHP Storm. Otherwise, if I'm writing a simple PHP package, like something like, Drupal QA or one of the other Composer plugins I maintain, if I'm just working on that, it's VS Code. And sometimes it's really Vim. I just open it in VI and make a quick change. So I like the fact that, okay, a commit check would tell me that, like, if I made a typo somewhere, I'll catch it at the commit stage. And then CI, of course, so at work we use GitLab with GitLab CI. For my own projects, it depends, like, so for the packages that I maintain, they're usually on GitHub. So I use GitHub Actions over there. Travis in some cases, like some really old ones, when before GitHub Actions came out, I used Travis on that. So again, it doesn't matter where we are running those. It's just important that they're running at all levels. And if something for some reason misses my commit hooks as well, like for example, sometimes I edit files directly in GitHub's interface, and then the GitHub Actions will tell me that there is an error. By the way, speaking on topic of linting, GitHub has this, GitHub Actions, if you're familiar. I mean, they say it's not really CI, and yeah, they're right, but it's like, for practical purposes, it's CI. And they have an image for super linter. It's basically like they're packaged all linters in one package, and you just need to configure it. I have a video for that. I can just share that video later. That's not static analysis though. That's just linting, and I run it on one of my. It's not PHP. Yeah, because I think last time when I checked, it didn't have a PHP linter in it in that image. So I put it on a repository which had mainly Ansible and Terraform code. And yeah, it does run linting on that. Yeah, but that's interesting. Like in linting, you could check it out. Any other questions? As always, like I said earlier, Twitter is one of the best ways to reach me. So at any time, you want to, like, if you have issues with this, I mean, of course, you can create GitHub issues. Just create an issue over here if you're facing any kind of problems with this. But otherwise, Twitter is great as well. Just reach out on Twitter for any of these.
Great. Thanks a lot, Hussein.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching through this.
I'm going to stop the recording now.